but I want to know why people are, like, you know what I mean. So now that we don't, I really don't see why people there's she is not an incorrect. We also except for our own of African as, but what if it's not an actual good written book with good but I'm pretty hated by the inter so many of the characters made their hatred. How do you all, no, that's not right. Hello everyone and welcome to a new video here in my channel. If you're new, hi and welcome. I'm Ra. I'm very happy to see you here. If you're not new and you already know me, hi, welcome back to a new video here in my channel. For today's video, I'm going to be reading one-star reviews that people have given to the books that I have rated 5-star this year. So I'm doing another episode of me reading, 5-star reviews and 1-star reviews of my 5-star reads or my 1-star reads. But in this specific case, I'm going to be using the books that I have given 5 stars so far this year. So I gave 3 books 5 stars this year, only 3 books so far, and we're in May. So I don't think we're gonna get that many more books out of these. So in today's video, I'm gonna be reading the 1-star reviews that people have given to these 3 books on Goodreads and on Storygraph, because I want to know why people didn't like these 3 books that I absolutely adored. So let's begin with the video. If you're excited to see the video, please like, subscribe, and turn on the post notifications so you're notified when I post a brand new video every Friday. And now let's begin reading some 1-star reviews, and let's start getting angry, because I will not get any type of criticism on this book. I love this book so much. They don't deserve the hate at all. Like, they deserve no hate. So yeah, let's begin with this video and let's begin reading some 1-star reviews and why people are angry and mad at everything, and why people just want to give hate to books that are literally perfection. Let's begin reading. So just as clarification, it is completely okay that you like books that I don't, and it's completely okay that I love books that you don't. We all have different opinions and we like different things, so it's completely okay that we don't always agree on, book opinions and in book ratings. It's completely okay. I'm just doing this for fun, and please don't come out at me. Again, if you don't like these books, it's fine. If you love them, it's okay as well. Like, it's completely okay. The first book that I'm going to be reading 1-star reviews of is Lessons in Chemistry. That was the first book I gave 5 stars this year. So let's read some reviews of why people didn't like this wonderful book that Bonnie Galmus wrote. This is long. Okay, I like this. Okay, this girl said, "This book is mind-numbing bad. I don't really see why everybody writing rave reviews are saying. So I'm a chemist, and this main character is exactly the type of chemist that we make fun of as a pretentious snob that non-ironically calls household items by their scientific name and inserts their scientific knowledge into any conversation they have to assert how intelligent they are. There's a part where she criticizes a can of soup for having chemicals in it, even though a chemist would know that all food that exists is made of chemicals. That is literally how the world works. So on top of being an arrogant snot, she's also an incorrect arrogant snot on multiple occasions. Another point I'd like to bring up as a chemist, Elizabeth Sott apparently has several PhDs worth of knowledge on degrees that she didn't even do. Her passion apparently is abiogenesis, to which actual scientists dedicate their entire academic career so slowly. Yet she also knows food science, an entirely different course of study, and can also teach herself how to row slowly by reading physics books. another entirely different course of study. It must be where her ridiculous daughter got her ridiculous genes from. She enthusiastically reads Norman Mailer and Vladimir Nabok at age 4. I mean, didn't we all? He also debates religion with a reverend who converts to atheism. Again, relatable preschool experiences we all experienced. I'm also fairly sick of women putting down other women in all aspects of life, and this is no exception. Almost every other woman in the story is presented as catty, confining, and simple-minded, because they all believe in God, which is good hammers that only good total airheads do. Except for our main character, because she's not like the other girls. She wears pants and talks about how Sweden has subsidized childcare, which didn't even exist in 1960s yet. There is also no mention of any characters of color in this story, but that doesn't stop the author from comparing being a housewife to slavery and including the daughter reading about Congo cannibals to other sized people of African descent. Bear in mind that this is marketed as a comedy book, so haha. Every male character is also very chauvinistic pig with no redeeming qualities, also very hysterical. I didn't even touch the most offensive part of the novel. Trigger warning, the beginning of features a graphic rape scene, so good thing they didn't bother including a content warning. A novel that sparks joy on every page, claims a dust jacket, a claim bullshit. In summary, there are no redeeming qualities about this book except maybe that there was a dog in it. I have never thought of this book like this before, but I do understand that if you're a chemist, you probably know more about chemistry than everyone else. Like, I have no idea of chemistry. I have no idea. I do English literature. Why would I know a lot about chemistry? I don't know a single thing, and that's why I enjoyed it, because I was just reading things that I don't fucking know about, but I was able to kind of understand what the book was explaining, chemistry related. So I didn't feel stupid, but it made me feel like I was learning things. And again, if you're an actual chemist, you probably, can give all the criticism to this book, because like if it's a book that it hasn't been, researched properly, I understand that you say, okay, this is wrong because I'm a chemist and I know what I'm talking about. But I'm not a chemist, so I don't really care if it's, true to real life or not. I don't care. I just enjoyed it so much. Okay, this other girl says, I could have saved time and read a laundry list of cliches instead of reading this book. Lesson in chemistry was full of issues, not a non-exhaustive list. Oh, she made a list. Okay. Elizabeth is a scientist in the 1950s, but reads like someone traveled back from 2022 just to spout feminist monologue at anyone within earshot. Elizabeth is an elite rower on her very first day. No need of any background in sports whatsoever. She can keep up with 6'4" men. Makes perfect sense because feminism, keep up with the boys, etc. Elizabeth is very sexy. She neither knows nor cares that she is sexy. Puts no effort into her appearance, but the author makes sure that we know that she is a hot one because she's smart and sexy or something. Elizabeth is a scientist, ergo she only thinks in logic. She's actually a cyborg without feelings or without the idea of how human interactions work. We know this based on how cringy every single interaction she has is. Elizabeth uses aforementioned logic to disprove religion. Checkmate. Thesis everywhere. Everything. Elizabeth has cracked the case. Overall, extremely ridiculous and unrealistic. Next. I didn't think it was unrealistic. I think some of the books that appear, try to show feminism. I feel like just this book is trying to empower feminism in the 1950s when it was a time of, not really possible for women to speak up. How the author did it, and if that is actually what you're supposed to do, I don't know. I just enjoyed it. Again, if you didn't like it, again, it's completely fine. Okay, I completely understand. Okay, this one is good. This was a long one. I'm liking this. So this one says, I have a really hard time ranting books poorly because I'm a firm believer that there's some valuable lessons to be found in every story, even if it's not your cup of tea. However, I found myself having a visceral reaction throughout this book. I don't like writing lengthy reviews, but I am pretty heated by it. I also want to preface that I am a real life woman chemist, one who also studied food chemistry and does science communication. So I probably wasn't the target audience. I found that the book felt very much like it was meant for pop science doesn't care about your feelings crowd, with major doses of white feminism trying to look intersectional but failing. And before I dive deep into the examples of why I dislike the book, I want to mention that the story has been optioned for a streaming series. In case any producer or the author sees the review, please reach out to an American Chemical Society, ACS, work directly on the producers of Breaking Bad to help ensure there was an accurate representation of chemistry. Doing this matters. Okay, now I will resume my griping. The science. I was immediately drawn to the premise of the book because I am a chemist and I love fiction authored by scientists. So I thought this would be great. But the author isn't a scientist apparently, and it becomes very obvious how the characters talk in chemical formulas. What? That's not a thing we do. Chemical formulas are shorthand for writing, but we use the name. And at one point, the main character apologizes for the mess due to the misbalanced centrifuge. Y'all, misbalanced centrifuges in 1960 are so dangerous. This is simply not a quirky, endlessly mess as a scientist would make in the midst of their genius. It's something that would have disastrous consequences and quite likely kill someone, depending on the size of the centrifuge. I don't know how to read that word. Imagine threatening someone accidentally hitting the accelerator instead of the brakes when the kid runs out of the middle of the road as a quickly example of your driving abilities. It's that scale of seriousness. I'm also appalled by how canned foods were demonized. It's a scene of cooking show. The protagonist discusses mushrooms. She toasts aside canned cream and mushroom soup as poison. Yo, this got me heated. Canned food were an important preserving technology used at the time, and to this day, canned foods provide nutritious foods in a way that is safe for the environment. What impact is this going to make on the readers? Food deserts exist, and you can't just demonize canned foods like that without any explanation. And oh, there's a weird episode on the cooking show where the analogy of to explain chemical bonds was geopolitics. What? It made no sense. The mood. This book is described as hilariously funny. I wish it were. It was tried to be funny, but then it has something seriously heavy themes that it does not handle gently. There are 2 sexual assault scenes, and the main love interest dies pretty early on the awful scene. It was a lot. The characters. Y'all, I hate the protagonist. She's so two-dimensional. The absolute smartest chemist in the institute always talks in jargon even when she's absolutely unnecessary. Yet somehow she's so charismatic to become the lead of a TV show with no television credits. What? At once, she's the star of the show. She makes really unreasonable demands about how it should be run, and it's presented like a feminism rather than being unreasonable and awful. And the love interest is a complete asshole to everyone, yet manages to treat the protagonist with a modicum of respect. So of course, she falls madly in love with him. I really don't find any of the side characters to be interesting or compelling. In fact, they are all like caricatures. I'm also baffled by including the dog's perspective, also confused by how he went from running away from the bombs to successfully finding the first bomb and delivering it safely. Why was the dog working on the lab? Literally do not understand any of these choices. The politics. There is no way that a woman in the 60s would discuss secularism and socialism on air. This absolutely killed the suspension and disbelief it might have had. This book felt like a pretty direct attack on religious beliefs. So many of the characters made their hatred of religion to be such a big part of their personalities, and it is so off-putting. You can be a scientist and religious. It's okay. It doesn't make you a bad scientist, and I really hate that this book presents it that way. While I'm not religious, I have several friends and colleagues who are, and they do excellent science. This really felt like a weird author vendetta that went against the mission of empowering women in STEM. Again, if you're a scientist, I feel like you should read the book to see if it's, accurate, but just don't take it as seriously. Because yes, you're a chemist, you probably know much better than the actual author, but it's just a fun little book, I feel like, you know what I mean? It's just a fun little book. I'm gonna read one more review of this specific book, and then I'm gonna change to the next book that I gave 5 stars this year. So I'm gonna do this one because it's not as long. This one says, no, just no. I'm probably an outlier, and I'm glad. I feel sorry for people who think this way. The overwhelming thing that most people are awful, which can be occasionally true, is not something I enjoy reading about, especially if a book is marketed otherwise, which this one was. It was not witty or laughed out loud funny. Overall, this book felt dark, cold, and disturbing. The main character came off as so frigid and almost robotic, and it made hard for me to root for her. For being a genius, she couldn't seem to figure out simple things regarding life, and so much seemed so over the top, ridiculously so, not relatable at all. The idea of the story sounded interesting and promising, but the author's themes of almost all men are evil sex offenders or pedophiles were just beat to death. I also found the extreme religious bigotry to be too much and very off-putting. I respect other people's faith, or lack of it, but I don't believe in slandering any religion constantly and repeatedly. Forcing you excessively prejudiced opinions on religion is completely ignorant and obnoxious. In fact, this book was so college and hateful, it put me in a bad mood. I feel like everyone who hates the book is just people who are chemists because they know what they're talking about and the book is not really, really good. Like, you know, it's not really showing chemistry properly. And they're just, most of them, they're just talking about the religious part of the book. I am religious, I'm Christian, I believe in God, and I read it and I enjoyed it so much. But I think it was just because I was not really, focusing on, oh, this book is just saying all these things about things of a religion. I was just trying to understand what the author was trying to do and how she was trying to like explain something in a different period of time with all these other things. Like, I didn't think it was that deep, but people just, I mean, if you don't like it, I understand, it's okay. So that is Lesson Chemistry. And now let's move to Medusa by Jessie Barton. I was not expecting to give this book a 5-star, and then when I read it, I spent an hour trying to figure out what happened, and then I spent a day just thinking about it. So I'm like, this is a 5-star. It cannot be something else. Like, it can't be something else. It has to be a 5-star. So let's read some reviews, monster reviews of Medusa by Jessie Barton. So most of them are pretty short, so that's gonna be good. We can read quite a few of them. So this girl says, there was literally nothing happening but conversation for 170 pages. Half of the dialogue was so out of place. Set in ancient Greece and talking about girlfriends and cologne and calling someone that creep. Honestly, kind of felt like he was reading my 13-year-old on Wattpad. This other person said, all for feminist retellings of Greek myths. Natalie Haynes and Madeline Miller leading for the pack in how to do it with every verve, humor, and humanity. Unfortunately for me, Jessie Barton lacks substantially and humor. I found Medusa as a very heavy-handed polemic-like reimagining. Earnest and meaningful prose bores me to tears, and this was packed with such earnest significance that it was eye-rolling tedious. Not for me. This other girl just said, boo, throwing tomatoes. I like that one. That's a funny one. Okay, this girl said, how do all these Asian women get the mind and perspective of modern person and get same judgment of the society she lives in as someone living today would have? She does not belong in ancient Greek, that's for certain. Read Mary Durnault instead. She can really write minds that are different from modern ones, characters that truly belong in societies very different from our own. This one felt completely flat. It seems mostly like Madeline Miller fanfic. Okay, this one said, oh yes, of course we know Poseidon is awful because his belly like whale bubbler, love feminist fat phobia. The book was super boring too, literally just two characters talking to each other for 90% of the book. Snore. Despite the Medusa occasional growing in gender studies 101, comments about how life is easier for boys. The book is about her wanting this boy. Lol. And nah. Okay, this one says, so, it wasn't the worst I've ever read in my life, but it was certainly wasn't the greatest either. The poetic structure felt forced and those random important snippets of wording was just odd. It felt like reading a fanfiction author trying to fancy while occasionally sleeping. Why did they have dogs? Why were her snakes basically the rainbow? I assume to have that. How can you think of a monster while it's so colorful and beautiful? I don't know. I did think the overall of the interaction were nice. I thought the conversation felt a bit awkward at times, and DP and Medusa managed to not get her head chopped off in the retelling. It is just in case Miller and Saint be so starstruck by this book unless I'm completely dumb and lost. Maybe they're also just very nice and I'm not getting the artistic finesse behind this book. Who knows? But yeah, thank God I didn't buy this book for its full price, but I got it from a buddy, haha. Mwah. I feel like just I really like this book. I really like the whole conversation because literally the whole book is just a conversation between Medusa and the other main character. And I feel like this book is very good because it's able to explain this whole story, this whole plot, this whole background. It's able to explain everything by just one conversation, like one very long conversation. But I feel like this book is able to express a lot and show a lot by only using conversations, and I feel like that's very powerful, and that's why I really, really enjoyed it. And at one point I was very connected with the characters. I'm like, I actually love this, how they are falling in love but they can't, just be together and all that. I really liked it. and many people didn't, which is okay. Like, again, I completely understand. I get it. It's fine. These are all mostly very short. So I'm gonna read a few more and then we'll change to the next book, because I know the next book is gonna have very long reviews. Like, I know that. So this one says Medusa by Jessie Barton falls disappointingly short of expectations. The promise of a compelling tale about exiled Gorgon, gaunted by gods and surrounded by snakes, failed to deliver a satisfying narrative. Despite the intriguing premise, the execution lacked in depth and engagement found similar mythological stories. Medusa's character, meant to be a central focus, feels one-dimensional, and her journey lacks of emotional resonance that would make readers empathize with her plight. The memories of her past are inadequately explored, leaving a void and understanding the depth of her struggles. The introduction of Theseus as a catalyst of change in Medusa's life feel forced, and the enthusiastic desire, love, and betrayal failed to evoke the intended emotional impact. The narrative failed to capture the essence of the myth or offer a fresh perspective on the character of Medusa. While marketed as a book for fans of Greek mythology, Medusa lacks of depth and substance needed to satisfy readers who enjoyed works like Circe and Ariadne. The execution of a story and character development leaves much to be desired, resulting in a disappointing read for those seeking captivating mythological tale. This other review says, I had high hopes for this book. I love Greek mythology. It feels like a vast fantasy world to me, and Medusa's story was always fascinating me. She is one of the most misunderstood figures in mythology, and I've been searching for a retelling that truly does her justice. Unfortunately, Medusa by Jessie Barton was another disappointment. A feminist retelling should go beyond surface level themes, but this book was feeling empty, like one of those old WAPA stories with pretty writing with no real depth. It claims to center Medusa, and her story gets lost in bland storytelling and predictable tropes. Instead of capturing the complexity of her myth, the injustice, the power, the tragedy, Barton's version just skims the surface. I've read many retellings, and they all seem to fall into the same trap. Either they dilute Medusa's story into cliché, or they barely focus on her at all. This book was not different. If you're looking at retelling that truly deserves Medusa's experience and way their transformation, this one won't be it. Have you read Medusa's retelling that actually feels authentic? Because at this point, I'm still searching. I am so sorry for people who actually want a real Medusa retelling. Should I write that? Because I do want to write like some type of book with like a retelling of Greek mythology. I feel like that could be very fun to write. But yeah, okay, that's pretty, like, okay. I feel like everyone is just like very big fan of Greek mythology and didn't really enjoy it, which I get, is fine. I loved it. I adored it. I loved the writing style. It gave me a lot of the same vibes as Madeline Miller, and I love Madeline Miller with all my heart. And I want to read Ariadne, which one of the reviews did like mention. I do want to read that one, so I will eventually read it. But yeah. Finally, we have the last 5-star read that I have given this book so far this year, and that is Babel by R.F. Kuang. I loved Babel. I think when you're seeing this, I have already posted the reading vlog, so I will put it on the eye. But I have posted a reading vlog of me reading Babel, and I loved it. You could see in the reading vlog, I was just so excited all the time because I loved it. So let me see why people didn't really like this book, because I understand these kind of books are not for everyone. R.F. Kuang is not for everyone. So let's see why people didn't really enjoy this book. Okay, let's see. This one says, DNF at 60%, but I skipped around until the end. Dark Academia is hot right now, and Babel was supposed to be the Dark Academia novel of the year. However, I absolutely despised Babel, and here's why. What a boring, mean-spirited book. I had little charm and came from a place of hate. And can this author write about anything other than one person starring a revolutionary war? Even her Dark Academia novels ends up going to the same direction as her Poppy War trilogy. Sis hasn't gone over the Hunger Games phase, it seems. This book is so dull. The only creative aspect how the author managed to find different ways to say the same thing on every page. White people suck and they're evil. By the billionth time, while a person came along to crap on the main characters to say something stupid, I was like, okay, I get it, whitey, evil. And the footnotes were annoying and useless. They didn't add anything to the story, and you could predict exactly what they were going to say before you even read it, because of 90% of them were just to tear down every aspect of British history and culture. They popped in every now and then to tell you that some random thing was problematic. No shit, Sherlock. Everything from 200 years ago is problematic. That's just history for you. The characters. These are some of the most boring one-dimensional characters I've read about in a while. Robbing. The author legit forgot to give robbing a personality. His defining trait was basically just noticing and reacting to racism. Victory. She was perfect human with a flawless personality, which made her annoying. If she ever got mad at someone, the story would bend over backward and make her point of view justified. Rami. Rami's defining trait was that she hates British people and the culture with every fiber of his being, but gets very upset when someone questions why he chose to study in Britain. The author is trying to do something with the hypocrisy of this. But because she was so well bent on portraying white as evil and everyone else is good, she misses the mark. Okay, the message. The book's message about the harmful effects of British colonization is important and worth discussing. It's undeniably that the countries under British rule suffered greatly, but while I can understand Kwang's strong feeling on matter, I personally believe that British colonization is a complex issue that cannot be reduced to simply dichotomy for good or bad. I come from a culture that has been affected by British colonialism too. My mother is from a small South Pacific island that was colonized by the British in the 1800s. The traditional costume of my mother's culture were replaced by Western ones, and the actions of the British at the time caused trauma and still affects my mother's culture today. While it's important to acknowledge historical injustice, diluting them and harboring resentment towards white people today is not right. The thing I don't like about Babel is that there are very few grey areas. It's like 545 pages of encouraging the reader to see white people as one-dimensional caricatures and embracing feelings of resentment and victimization and then feeling justified by these thoughts. I think this book might encourage POCs to adopt victim mentality. When I was younger, I bought into the idea that I was a POC. I don't know what that means, so sorry. I have been grown since in some way because of the past, but these beliefs aren't even true, and they also cause a lot of unnecessary insecurity and depression. I realized that there was no end in the blame game. I deeply regret wasting my energy in all of that, so I hate seeing my fellow POCs waste theirs by buying their victimhood and resentment when they could be doing things to actually bring themselves up. Anyway, so yeah. If you were to study at Oxford in the 1800s, and no white international student would have been treated poorly by the locals. And even the book admits that at the time, Robin's home country of Canton was rife in misogyny. Every nation was committing vile and foolish acts 200 years ago. For example, my people used to literally eat their enemies. The last time I visited my mother's Iceland, I purchased a history book about people being kidnapped and eaten by rebel clans. It is not only for revenge, but it's also believed that the person consuming the victim would gain some of their power. When the British arrived, they condemned cannibalism. The British may have bought it, but the decision to act in customs over the island set off unchained events and led my mother's people into modern world. Oh my god, okay. Considering how popular this book is, I will likely encourage more people to buy into the mind hatred and leads the lifetime of anger, suffering, and victimhood. That's sad because I would rather see minorities breaking the cycle on our intergenerational trauma and living well and thriving. You can achieve that. I've been vengeful and expecting others to tolerate you. Sorry. This book was engaging and in mean-spiritedness that the fundamental grows to me. I call out gross shit when I see it, and this makes me uncultured wind, so be it. Oh my god. All these people, they all have the longest reviews ever. Oh my god. All of them. All of them have like freaking like 3K word reviews of things that they don't like. There's literally one that says, continue in the comments. May God never have mercy on my soul. What the fuck? Okay, this one is shorter. Thank God. I'm like, I can't read like all of that. That's a lot. Okay, I'm gonna read this one that's a bit shorter. This does not work with a coherent narrative. It glosses over events, hoping readers don't think too hard on them. Relies on how many plot conveniences and suspension of disbelief, and the characters are completely flat with no resemblance of personality to be found anywhere. It comes across as an excuse for the author to beat people over the head with themes in every paragraph, which makes it repetitive and patronizing and tedious to get through. Okay, this one is a bit longer, but it is divided in different sections. The person just went through all the parts that he didn't like, you know, in little sections, which I like. So this says, I have a lot of thoughts, and none of them are good. Probably the book that has disappointed me the most since Lace Verdugo, Rain and Rising, which pissed me off so bad I yelled and ranted about so much I disliked descending to anyone who could hear it. Setting, weak, so incredibly weak. There is a magic system in place, and it changes exactly nothing. The British Empire, at the height of the Industrial Revolution, uses inscribed silver as means to power invention, keep society running, and do all sorts of things. Yet the setting and is practical. No difference that the British Empire was actually like during an actual industrial revolution. It is not a fantasy novel at all. It's also insulting to call it an arcane story when it does not, in fact, based real history on the arcane at all. Big letdown. Characters. A lot of them are one-dimensional. The main character suffers from a very passive personality in the beginning of the book, only parroting what the people around him say. When he does go into the backbone, it's to absolutely delight in cruel, vicious violence. None of the characters of color believe in white person is capable of sympathy, are conscious of growing from learned biases. There is even one character that is so obviously hated by the author that it shines through every single paragraph in which she acts or describes, and that's obnoxious. Plot and pacing. This book had an incredibly slow start plot-wise. The pacing was so off, and the first handful of chapters, years passed, and none of it really mattered. The author also uses third-person close perspective, but every now and then dips into omniscience, but to ill effect. I can kind of get what she was going for, but I think she missed the mark on it by quite a lot. And I feel like the scope of plot was shortened a few years, the characters would have benefited from it. This distinct block of plot was then replaced by one predictable plot twist after another. This is supposed to be a thematic response to The Secret History and a tonal response to Strange Novel, but at several times I was instead of half-baking knock-off from Harry Potter, though less developed. I thought Trivelius's character death hurries through the most important chapters and leaves off an incredibly unsatisfying ending. Writing. I did love the writing in itself, at many times. The prose was absolutely wonderful. It's also obvious that she knows what she's talking about, because the passages about etymology, translation, language ring 100% true to my former translation made yourself. I do agree on that. That is one of the best things ever. But I didn't think the characters were one-dimensional. And many of them did. Like, I didn't think so. And I didn't get any of the plot twists. Like, none of them. I was like, all the time. Like, what the fuck? Okay, I'm gonna finish this one. Too bad the starts of the book with an annoying foreword has condescending footnotes every few pages. A story about the power of language, communication, and translation, I think is a big disappointment. The main character pulled it into the most beautiful way when he said something along the lines, the active translation unites people, but then the whole story just pits people of color against white Brits, with no room of nonce of growth. I felt incredibly grateful I could read this along with my friend X, who lives in Oxford, works for the university, and is herself of mixed race Asian British. Okay, all these are so freaking long. I'm not gonna read half, like, literally, you're not seeing how long these are. Like, this is crazy. All of them are so freaking long. What is wrong with these people? I'm gonna try and read a few more, but the thing is, if all of them are this long, I'm not gonna read more of these. Because, like, these are, like, at least 3K word reviews. It is crazy. Okay, this is short. Babel was extremely boring until maybe 60% when some action started. And with the action that came relentless preaching against the evils of this and the evils of that, and believe me, it went off 100 pages. The characters had no depth and were like cardboard cutouts for me. The magical system felt like plain flat. The amount of linguistic exploration dramatically slowed down the plot and the character development that is made this work much more boring than it is, and that it should have been. Like, at some point I was like, maybe I need some literature degree or something to be able to understand half of what is written. There was too much info dumped that I felt like a college lecture or long essay. I do agree there is a lot of literature references and like linguistic references, and that's personally what I really enjoyed as a literature student who also does, you know, linguistics. I loved it, and I have to say there were many books referenced that I only knew because I studied them at university at some point, and I am very grateful that I know of those books, because if I didn't, I would have not understood half of the book, and that is true. But that's why I loved it, because it was about something. It was the book is about a topic that I know a lot of, because my degree is all based around what the book talks about. So that's why I personally loved it, but I understand why people didn't like it if it's related to that, you know what I mean? Yeah, I don't think I'm going to read more of these. These are all so long. Okay, this one is not as long. I'm going to read this one and then I think I'm going to stop, because these are all like so freaking long. Okay, this one says, Babel review. I might be straying the pod, but my god, I hated this book. All I see in Instagram are amazing 5-star reviews, and I'm just sitting here after quite literally forcing myself to finish this book, wondering how. Let's talk about the good first. Punk touches a lot of very deep, important topics: racism, colonialism, identity. It is also very well researched and educational. That's the only good thing I can literally say about this book. So, now the bad. 1. Please only read this book if you enjoy academic text, because, kid you not, 70% of the book was like reading damn paper on translation. There were pages and pages of literal lectures, like fully written out lectures of the MC Robin sits through. So unless you're a language nerd, this will be painful, or language degree even. Again, this book is based on translation and literature. You do need some type of knowledge of these like books, or like things that are related, that are not related, that are involved in the book, if you want to fully understand it. So I understand that if you don't like reading, if you don't like, not even reading, if you don't like if you're not a language or like a literature student, you might find this book boring, even if you like to read, because you might not understand it. And I like this I understand fully. Like, it makes complete sense to me that if you don't know much about linguistic and translation or literature, because you don't study that at university or you don't work with it, you might just find it very boring and just impossible to read and to understand, which I understand completely. The characters, I couldn't connect with a single one. It seemed as tough each character had one quality and their entire personality hinged on. Example, Robin struggled with his identity. Letty was a privileged white girl, etc. And that was it. I found them all very hard to connect with, and this care about when we know so little about each of them. There was a lot of the telling instead of showing with the writing. The author saying, and they developed a deep friendship, but there were never any, portray of this in the development. We were told they became friends, and maybe that's another reason I couldn't connect with them. Footnotes that were pure torture. Plot. The very first 350 pages were slow and heck info dump. No plot, none. I didn't really get any of the plot that made me want to read. Keep reading up until 70%. Glorifying violence. No real fantasy. Apparently this is supposed to be a fantasy, but I sprinkles one of my madly fantasy-ish elements in the real world isn't a fantasy book. This is literary fiction. Honestly, I saw one comment that said people gave high ratings to the book that are about important issues. So unless that's your thing, this book will definitely drag you down. I understand that if you don't do literature, like a literature degree, if you don't understand linguistics or translation, this might be very, very hard to read and understand. And yes, there were so many footnotes. Sometimes there was just like a little page, like I remember a page that was just a tiny bit of actual book content and a bunch of like footnotes, and I didn't mind the footnotes because I'm used to reading footnotes. Like, again, I do literature, I know what, I'm used to reading footnotes, so I'm okay with it and I enjoyed it. But I understand why people didn't like it. Like, now that I've read the different reviews, I completely understand, because it's just like, it makes sense. So yeah, that is the video. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you had fun, hearing me talk about what people thought about my favorite books so far of this year, because I love these books so much with all my heart and soul, and I understand now why people didn't like them, but I'm still gonna have no criticism on them. Like, I will put these books on a pedestal for the rest of my life because they were amazing. At least for me they were, and I understand why people didn't like them, but I accept no criticism. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, remember to like, subscribe, and turn on the notifications so you're notified when I post a brand new video, and I will see you on the next one. I hope you enjoyed it, and yeah.